it's Andy, and today I'm coming to you with another genre recommendation video. So today's recommendation video is going to be based around romance. There's no sort of rhyme or reason for this video or to this video. I've basically just pulled off books that the romance to me is prominent and one that sort of sticks out to me. Books that I would recommend if you are a romance reader, and I'll give more in-depth thoughts about each book. I'm going to say right now, I'm not sure if this is going to be 1 or 2 videos because I've pulled over 30 books. I say pulled, they're like pulled out of their sections, but I've not taken them off the shelves because then I'll need to put them back on the shelves and it'll just get annoying. So I've pulled them out so that I can just grab them. Like I said, there's going to be no rhyme or reason other than just the point at which I grab them, and I'll go through each of the books and tell you why I'm recommending them, because you know that's how this works. So I'm going to jump right in with my first recommendation, which is Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This is a male romance novel, actually the first that I ever read male romance wise, and this is about Alex, who is the son of the President of the United States. His mother has become president, and the second in line for the throne of England, Prince Henry. So this is kind of like a miscommunication, hate to love. So these two end up in a sort of altercation publicly, and their families say that for PR reasons they are going to have to be seen together, they're going to have to spend time together, and they are going to have to like it or else. And in the time that they spend time together and they get to know each other and get to know each other as they are really, and not who they just are in front of everybody else, because obviously they're big PR figures, they start to develop this relationship, but they also know that the relationship wouldn't necessarily be accepted because Alex is Hispanic and obviously Prince Henry is royal from the UK, and I think we all know how that goes when you try and have a relationship with someone who's not white. Never mind the fact that, you know, they're gay. So yeah, this looks like a fluffy contemporary romance, and it is. There are some serious things in this as well, and the steamy scenes were quite steamy. Like when I saw this in the YA section, I was like, are you joking? Like, is this a joke? Because in saying that as well, this is the first sort of steamy book I'd ever read as well. So like the steamy scenes were quite steamy. Definitely not YA territory, definitely an adult book. But I really enjoy this. What I've done is I've pulled up, or I will pull up, a list of tropes and kind of go over what each book's tropes are. So this definitely has like an enemies to lovers. It's not like an enemies, like when I say enemies to lovers, a lot of the time I'm not talking about like proper enemies. I'm talking like snipey, rivalry sort of enemies where it's not like a life or death situation basically. So you've got your kind of enemies to lovers, you've got miscommunication and misunderstanding, but not in a way where it's like they just don't talk to each other. This is in a way of like they have thoughts about the other that's not necessarily true, and that's what leads to their animosity at first. You also then have forced proximity because they're forced together, and a bit of a forbidden romance because they know that they're not really meant to be together, but they obviously like each other. So yeah, I really enjoyed this, and it's definitely, I'd like this more than Casey McQuiston's other book, which might be controversial, but definitely something that's worth a read. The next is a trilogy that I came across thanks to Giovanna Fletcher, and that is the Rosie Project, the Rosie Effect, and the Rosie Result. This is a trilogy about a man who is very set in his ways. He's actually later on, it's not really a spoiler, later on diagnosed with autism. He basically has his set routine that he does every week. Everything goes exactly to plan every single day. He has it planned out by the hour, by the minute, by the second. And he then decides to try and find a mate, really, because he's so scientific about it. The thing I love about this is that Dawn, who's the main character, is a biologist, and he is also a like geneticist, and that is what I specialised in when I went to university, and was forensic science and DNA analysis. So I love this for the character because I just saw so much of myself in him when it came to like the geeking out side of it. In comes Rosie. and Rosie throws his life into absolute turmoil, and he starts this thing called the Rosie Project to see sort of what happens if he allows this woman to sort of take over and dictate some of his life in her massively chaotic way. And obviously we got a trilogy out of it because, you know, it's one of those, it's not even a slow burn romance, like this is their relationship and Don getting to know himself and, you know, learning to work with somebody as a companion, as a partner. I absolutely loved this. I loved this trilogy so much. It's definitely not like a big romance, like it's not a dramatic romance. It is very much a real life romance, and these characters, I just absolutely love them. It's very much trope-wise Grumpy Sunshine, friends to lovers, forced proximity because Rosie will not leave him alone, and yeah, that's about it trope-wise that I can remember. I've not read these in a while, but I just really like this for a nice, relaxing, sweet sort of romance. Next is a book that Meg is going to be very happy to see on this, and that is You Deserve Each Other by Sarah Hogle. I've now read all of Sarah Hogle's books, and this one by far is my favourite. This is one where you really need to trust the process. These two characters, you've got Naomi and Nicholas, who are perfect. They are the perfect couple. They have the perfect life. They have the perfect everything. Other than the fact that they are getting married in 3 months and they hate each other. Like, they despise each other. And they are, like I say, getting married in 3 months, and whoever backs out has to pay for the wedding. Now, there's a lot going on as well with Nicholas's mum getting really, really involved. The fact that Naomi has a very low-paying job, whereas Nicholas is very wealthy. And there's a lot of sort of head-butting because of a lot of miscommunication between the two of them. This book is basically starts off where they are trying to get the other one to cancel the wedding. So they are trying on purpose to drive each other mental. Like, they are trying to drive the other one to breaking up with them in like a big sort of like dramatic way. And they just get worse and worse and worse. And then all of a sudden, through this sort of rivalry that they have, they start to understand each other better and get back to the Naomi and Nicholas that initially met and realise where they've been taking each other for granted, and, you know, things that they've stopped noticing where the other has actually done something very thoughtful. And it then sort of comes to a story of them coming back together, learning to work as a couple. And I really, really enjoyed this. It's actually had a big impact for me when it came to my relationship, because it made me sort of step back and realise where I may have been beginning to fall into that trap of not realising when Kay has been doing something for me, or, you know, done something thinking of me, and I've just not acknowledged it either to her or to myself. And to made me realise that I really should be, you know, being a lot more thankful for these things. So I really, really enjoyed that. It got me out of a personal slump, because I'd been feeling really crap, and this really, really helped. It is absolutely trust the process. You need to trust the process on this book, but the outcome is so worth it. And in the meantime, watching them wind each other up is just like car crash TV. Like, you can't look away. It's so entertaining, but you know you shouldn't be looking at it. Absolutely loved it. Again, trope-wise, you've kind of got more like an enemies to lovers, like lovers to enemies to lovers, or like lovers to enemies to friends to lovers. It takes a journey. It's also kind of forced proximity because they are kind of like stuck together, and it's a second chance romance because, like I say, they are already getting married, but they've fallen out of love, and it's given that second chance to have the actual romance that they deserve. So yeah, I definitely recommend this, and I just trust the process. The next is another trilogy, and that is Crazy Rich Asians by Kim Kwang. So you've got Crazy Rich Asians, Train a Rich Girlfriend, and Rich People Problems. I picked this one up on a whim for something to read, and as you can see, I ended up with all of them because I really, really enjoyed this. This is about our main character called Rachel, and she is dating another Nicholas, Nicholas Young, who is a professor. She is also a professor at this university in New York, and he has a family wedding back in Singapore. Yeah, he has this family wedding to go to in Singapore, and he's like, oh, like, do you want to come? Like, it'll be the first time she's meeting his family, blah, blah, blah. And Rachel comes from a very sort of poor household, single parent, one income, mum worked several jobs, that sort of thing, and she knows pretty much nothing about Nicholas's past. And so they turn up in Singapore. Turns out Nicholas is filthy rich, and I mean, it's called Crazy Rich Asians. Like, you know, those people that have more money than sense. He's richer than that. Like, Rachel's thrown into this world that is absolutely unbelievable. You've got interfering aunties, you've got interfering mother, you've got these people who look at money like it's just always going to be there, to someone like Rachel who's always been sort of like counting every penny, and it's really overwhelming. But at the same time, Nicholas is still the same person, whether he's rich Nicholas or he's poor Nicholas. He is more than happy to live a life that Rachel is comfortable with, and the bond that these two have is really, really good. I love this whole saga. Just gets into like Real Housewives territory, and again, like Car Crash TV, you just can't stop watching it. I love this. I'm so hoping they continue to do the movies, because they did Crazy Rich Asians as a movie, and they started filming China Rich Girlfriend when the pandemic hit, so they didn't finish it, which is unfortunate, because I really, really want to see all of these as films. I think they do fantastically well, and the beautiful imagery that you get, like, just, oh, unreal. Trope-wise, it's a lot of romance. It's not really tropey as a romance, because they are together, they stay together. There is sort of miscommunication, misunderstanding, because Nicholas, having grown up that rich, doesn't understand why it's such a big deal, and he has to kind of come to terms with that, while Rachel is coming to terms with him being this wealthy and the implications for her and for her life. But yeah, that's kind of the crux of it. But again, this is a very realistic style romance, and it doesn't sound like it, but Kevin Kwan has written this based on people he knows, not necessarily people he knows firsthand, but he grew up in Singapore, and there's a lot of footnotes that like explain things like the different schools, and you know, how you were richer if you went to this school, but you were still rich, but not the richest if you went to this school, and the different societal norms and stuff. So it is realistically based, but in the world that like normal people don't ever get to sort of exist in. So it's a good time, it's fun, I love it. Next up is a new favourite of mine, and that is The American Roommate Experiment by Elena Armas. Now, if you've been here a little while, you'll know I did not particularly like The Spanish Love Deception. However, this was absolutely phenomenal. She knocked it out of the park with this one. The characters, the romance, everything was just unbelievably perfect for me. This follows our two characters, Rosie and Lucas. Lucas is the cousin of the woman in the first one, whose name, Lena. I always forget her name. So Lucas is Lena's cousin, and he has come over and is going to be staying in Lena's apartment while he is sort of on a break from work. He's a pro surfer, and Rosie is Lena's best friend in New York, and her roof has caved in due to a flood in her neighbour's bathroom. So she has gone over to stay at Lena's apartment, not realising that Lucas is supposed to be there. So while Rosie is settling in, Lucas comes to the door, and a whole nightmare ensues, with her calling the police thinking that he's trying to break in and like kill her or worse. But then these two end up staying together in this apartment, in this studio apartment. There's no bedroom, it is one room and then a bathroom, and they sort of get to know each other. So Lucas has a secret he's hiding about his work and about his future that he does not want to speak to his family about. He's not coping with it very well. Mentally, he's not doing great, and he doesn't seem to realise that. And then Rosie is having writer's block, so she just quit her big high-paying job to continue writing. She published a book, it did really well. She decided to quit to do writing full-time, and suddenly has writer's block on the second book. And she's realised that she just doesn't know how to fall in love anymore. She doesn't know how to find a romance. So she decides to go on fake dates to sort of go through the motions. And so Lucas proposes, instead of doing that with randoms, why not with him? You know, they can go on the fake dates, they can go through the whole process. He'll know about it so she doesn't feel guilty about fooling other guys. They know they're not going to fall in love with each other. Famous last words. So yeah, it just follows them as they do this, and I love this. These two together, the way that Lucas is just like the slow burn, but like the angst, and oh, I love it. I absolutely adored this. This is one of my favourite romance ever. If you like a slow burn, if you like that sort of almost things happening, this is the book for you. Like, they get so close and then stop. And it's just that, I love that anticipation in a book. It's mwah, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. And it's also so sweet because Lucas is just a sweetheart. And yes. Trope wise, so we've got a little bit of grumpy sunshine-ish. I would say that Lucas is a little bit on the grumpy side sometimes, to Rosie's sunshine. Maybe not necessarily as much. Very much a friends to lovers. Kind of falls into the brothers. It's not like a brother's best friend trope, but it's our best friend's family member sort of thing. You've got some fake dating, only one bed, and a little bit of forbidden romance. Alina doesn't appreciate her dating. Yeah, I would say if you want to read this without reading the Spanish Love Deception, you probably could. But I also would say this book is worth getting through the Spanish Love Deception if you're not loving it. So, up to you how you want to do that. The next one is another trilogy. This seems to be the habit that I'm getting into, like single book trilogy. Anyway, and that is To All the Boys I've Loved Before by Jenny Han. And obviously you then have P.S. I Still Love You and Always and Forever, Lara Jean. This follows our main character, Lara Jean, as she is dealing with the death of her mother and ends up sort of living with her family, and dad and her sister, as they kind of get to the point of healing after her mother has died and her dad is learning how to be a single parent. Lara Jean is in high school and has had this habit of writing a love letter to every boy she's ever loved, and one day these letters get sent out and they are received by the boys. Now, two of the boys she's at school with, and one of them she actually likes and the other one is kind of like a jockey bully type, not very nice guy, and she ends up striking a deal with him to fake date so that the other guy that she actually likes won't think she's interested in him, so that it kind of like double bluffs him so that he might like her for not being interested, you know, that sort of thing. And yeah, so turns out the sort of not so nice guy turns out to be a bit of a sweetheart, and they have this fantastic relationship. And obviously there are bumps in the road and things like that, but I just find Lara Jean navigating her way through relationships and through love just to be so fantastic to read. I read all these books back to back to back, just splurged them all in like less than 24 hours because I was hooked. The writing style of Jenny Han is so easy to read, and if you want like a nice sweet style romance, because it is high school and it's not like an angsty will they won't they eventually there's sex kind of romance, it's very much a sweet romance, and I absolutely love it with all the sort of high school politics, so just remember that going in. I love Lara Jean as a character, and I love the way she navigates things and works things out and just gets a chance to be a real teenager. Trope wise, you've kind of got not quite an enemies to lovers, but obviously he's like the bad boy, the one that is a bit of a dick to everybody, and she's like the sweetest of sweethearts. You then have friends to lovers because obviously they develop a friendship. You get some miscommunication in there, not necessarily what you'd think though. Fake dating, and there's a little dip into second chance romance, but not as like a major thing. Yeah, I really love this. I want to reread this because it just was You know those palate cleanser books where it's just something to lift your spirits between heavy books? This does that. This really does lift your spirits and I love it. The next one is A Brush with Love by Maisie Eddings. This one was sent to me by Becca, and she really, really liked this book. She also sent me this along with it, and this is a kind of version, it's not a smutty romance, but it's a romance between two characters who are at dental school, and at the time I was training to be a dental nurse, so it just like, I thought it was so funny the way these characters were and how well it was written that way. Maisie Eddings herself is so funny. I follow her on Twitter. I love her and I'm so looking forward to reading more of her books. I just need to actually get around to getting them off my TBR. But these two characters, you've got Dan, who is a first year student, and Harper, who is a third year student, fourth year student, I'm not entirely sure, who accidentally crash into each other, literally. Like, she falls down the stairs, lands on him, and breaks his like mold, like the concrete mold, and they're very, very difficult to get right. So she's like, I'm so sorry, I will help you make another one. Like, and they end up kind of studying together, get to know each other better, and Harper's very much like so focused on her work that she is blind to everything, and Dan is really like into her and she doesn't notice, and I love these two together. They're really, really funny. Trope wise, they are a bit, I mean, I suppose there's a little bit grumpy sunshine with Harper being the grumpy and Dan being the sunshine. You've got a friends to lovers, but it's funny because Harper doesn't even want to be friends with him, but he kind of worms his way in, and I absolutely love that about Dan. That's really it, I suppose. It's been a while since I've read this, but I just really like this. It's that sort of character. Harper's that kind of character where she clings so hard to her work that she doesn't live, and Dan kind of helps her loosen off that grip a bit and live her life, and I just love them together. I really do. Again, this is a nice, easy romance that just sort of palate cleanses and gives you all the good feels. This is when my shelves start to fall apart because I'm on this one. First of all, we've got The Roommate and The Intimacy Experiment, both by Rosie Danan. I love these two books. The Intimacy Experiment is not as popular as The Roommate, but The Roommate is one of my favourite romance of all time. This is following our main character Clara, who is the sort of like epitome of good girl. Like, her family are into politics and she can't step a toe out of line. Not that she ever would step a toe out of line. And then one day she's had enough and she decides to move to LA to move in with her friend, who she has been head over heels in love with for as long as she can remember, and he doesn't even seem to know she's there, really, in that sort of way. So she moves over to LA to live with him, and as she gets there, he is leaving because his band has gotten a tour opportunity, and he says, oh, don't worry about it, you can still stay here. Oh, by the way, I've rented my room out to this guy called Joshua Darling. And she's like, what? I'm sorry, what? In come Joshua Darling, who is one of my favourite male romance love interests of all time. You ask anybody, I have yet to find somebody who has not absolutely loved The Roommate. And the thing with The Roommate is as well, it's not just a romance, it covers quite a lot of topics that people do not want to talk about. I even told my mum about this. I was so like wrapped up. The smut in this is great, like, don't get me wrong. The smut in these two books, for me, I love them. It's not as much in this one as there is in this one, but I absolutely loved their relationship. I loved the conversations that were had in this book, the conversations about the way people are treated based on their jobs and the respect that should be given for jobs. Like, you shouldn't give less respect to one person's job because you see them as less than. Like, that's not how it goes. I absolutely love the conversation that's had in this book. I could write essays on this book and the way that Rosie looks at these topics. I absolutely loved it. But yeah, so Clara finds herself living with Josh, and Josh is just like that really perceptive guy that knows everything about you by looking at you, and he's also suave as hell, and by 30 pages in you figure out what his job is, and goddamn, from there everything gets a bit tense. And I love it. I can't say any more about it, but like, I love it. The Intimacy Experiment follows Naomi, who is a character from The Roommate. This is definitely one that I would say, if you're going to read The Intimacy Experiment, you need to read The Roommate to understand the background this is about Naomi, who is looking to both reconnect with her past at the same time as grow in her future. And she meets Ethan, who is a rabbi who is in need of more funding for his synagogue, and he wants to run a set of sort of dating sex classes. So he hires Naomi, who is also Jewish, but those are the roots that she's trying to get away from because of how she's perceived by other Jews. And their relationship in this is very like hit or miss, and I really enjoyed it. Naomi basically runs this seminar about how to get to know someone, start dating, how to progress the relationship, when you should be having sex, that sort of thing. And Ethan begins to fall for her, but Naomi's like, whoa there, cowboy, like, I am not interested. But secretly she is. But there's a whole lot in this again. The conversations that are had, I feel, are really, really important, because Naomi is sort of forced to confront her past with Judaism and with the synagogue from home, her family life, things like that, that she has sort of run from for years. And Ethan kind of shows her that the people she, you know, has in her past aren't necessarily a full representation of his people and their people. And the conversation around religion and judgment is just fantastic, and I absolutely adored it. It's a shame that this one doesn't seem to be as popular, but I just think for the, like, I'm not really big on religion, but the religious sort of healing that is done in this book, I think, is done really, really well. And the romance for me is really, I find it really funny. I think it's like a comical romance, but that's just me. Next up again are some new faves, and that is Having One Summer and Hook, Line and Sinker. Oh my god, this describes how these books had me. Like, hook, line and sinker. This again is a duology, kind of like the Rosie duology. So the first one is A Having One Summer, and you've got Piper, who is our main character, and she is spoiled, and she's based off Alexis from Schitt's Creek. I've never seen it, but anybody who has, you'll kind of know what kind of character she is. Think like the Kardashians, you know, where the family is rich and she is famous just for being famous. And one night she goes a bit too far, and her stepdad is like, you need to learn responsibility. So her and her sister are carted back. Her sister decides to go with her, Hannah, carted back to this small town in Washington called Westport, where her father is from, her birth father. Unfortunately, he died when she was very young, before her mum met her stepdad. And he is pretty much like this massive, massive part of this village, this town, and she has never really been. Neither has Hannah. So they are told, he owns a pub there, like, it's still in his name, it's now in your name, you will go and run this pub and you will learn to be responsible. While she's there, she meets Brendan, who is a sea captain. It's a big fishing village, and he is a sea captain in this village. And first of all, he does not want her there. He outright comes and tells her that she is not welcome, that she needs to leave. And she's like, well, I would like to leave, but I can't until I do something with this place. So her and Hannah sort of figure out a way to get the pub up and running again, and Brendan kind of like is a bit intrigued by Piper and starts to get to know her and know that she's not just what she sort of puts on. Brendan was married to one of the daughters of one of the prominent families in Westport, and she died 7 years ago, but her shadow sort of still lingers over Brendan, and it causes him a bit of difficulty personally. And he also gets a chance to heal from that and sort of think about it and realise the kind of relationship that he had with her in this, not to her detriment. She was lovely, it's nothing like that, it's just that he realises that they maybe got married when they shouldn't have, and unfortunately he'll never be able to make it right with her because she died. These two get to know each other. I absolutely loved it. Like, Brendan is very much a like 0 to 60, and he knows what he wants and he goes for it, whereas Piper's just like, whoa, what do I do? And it's so, I love this so much. The audiobooks are fantastic. Trope wise, you've got your grumpy sunshine. If anybody is grumpy, it's Brendan. Absolutely. There's kind of an enemies to lovers type thing going on here, because like I say, when she turns up, Brendan's like, get out. He's like, you know, that ghost in the house. It's like, get out. That's Brendan. So you get like an enemies to lovers type thing there. There is some misunderstandings and miscommunications that happen in it. Forced proximity, because it's a very small town. and you just like, you're all stuck together. I thoroughly underestimated these books. They are chunkers, but again, the paper's really thick. It's like 350 pages. It looks a lot more intimidating than it actually is. Definitely give it a chance. I just absolutely adored these characters. Then there's Hook, Line and Sinker, and this follows Hannah, who is Piper's little sister, and Fox, who is the first mate on, or really skipper on Brendan's boat. And Fox is a player. Fox is a fuckboy. That is all anybody ever has sort of plastered him as, because that's what his dad was. So that is the persona he has taken on. He meets Hannah and they become friends, and this is set 6 months or so after it happened when summer ends. So they've had these 6 months of chatting and getting to know each other sort of from the other ends of the country. And then Hannah comes back with a film crew to film a movie in Westport, and stays with Fox at his home because he's like, look, I'll be gone on the ships, you can stay here, it's fine. But Hannah is also not one to not dig. So when she realises that people think one thing of Fox when she actually knows the opposite, she goes digging into why. And he is determined to hold her at arm's length. Like, Brendan tells him he is not allowed to touch her. And unfortunately, Fox believes a lot of what people say about him, even though, like, we know it's not true. Hannah knows it's not true. Fox, if he really thought about it, would know that it's not true. Like, he is not just a good time guy. He is fantastic. I love him. I love Fox so much. So much. This, again, I thoroughly underestimated how great this book was going to be. Again, it looks intimidating, but it's like huge writing. It's only just over 300 pages, like nearly 400 pages. I would give it a go because these two, and again, this is one of the ones where it's like a stop start, where it's like they almost get there and then they stop. And I love it. And I love the fact that these two are there for each other and they don't give up on each other, and they're just absolute rocks for each other. And I love it. I love it so much. I love the relationship. I love the foundation that this relationship is built on. So yeah, don't get me started. I'll just keep going. Okay, so next I'm going to go over Ali Hazelwood. So her first book is The Love Hypothesis, and then we've got Love on the Brain, and I've got this lovely edition, and then there is also Loath to Love You, which is her anthology set. There's 3 novellas in this. There's also Love Theoretically, which is her new book, which comes out in 2 months. It comes out in June, and I'm really looking forward to that. I have already read it because I got an ARC, but I'm also looking forward to having it in my hands. So basically, what Ali Hazelwood does is she writes STEM novels. So each of these characters is a woman in STEM, and the stories are all fairly similar. The Love Hypothesis, you've got Olive and Adam. Olive has been dating this guy for 5 minutes, and after they break up, her friend is interested, and her friend doesn't want to date him because, Olive was dating him. And Olive's like, God, no, I'm over. I'm actually going on a date tonight. But she actually goes to work, and when she sees her friend in the lab, she grabs the first person that comes through the door and kisses him. Turns out it's Adam, and Adam is feared amongst the staff at this school. Now, Olive is a research PhD and Adam is a lecturer, but in a different part of the university, so they don't actually cross before then. And she explains to Adam what's kind of happened, and they decide to fake date. This book, there's one scene in this book that has me in a chokehold, and Becca, you know what scene it is? You know what scene it is? The bonus scene. But anyway, these characters, I love it. Olive is so scatterbrained while being like extremely intelligent, and Adam is so like, he's grumpy, but he doesn't realise he's grumpy. He's so focused on what he's doing that he doesn't seem to understand that other people perceive this as him being an absolute bastard. And he kind of learns to be softer because of Olive. The relationship these two have, I just absolutely love. They are getting to know each other so well because there's no chance of a relationship. Again, famous last words. And again, Ali Hazelwood's smut is fantastic. Trope-wise, again, Grumpy Sunshine. Like, Adam is the grumpy of all the grumpy. It's unreal how grumpy he is. Suppose friends to lovers because they get to know each other. Fake dating. There's an only one bed trope in this at one point. And it's just, I love these two. I love these two. It's not my favourite, Love Theoretically is, but I love this. It's a fantastic first book. The next thing she wrote was Love on the Brain, and this follows Bee and Levi, who are on the same NASA project. Bee has been hired for this, and turns out Levi is the engineer on this, and Bee is a neuroscientist, and they're sort of making them work together to develop this thing for space missions. They met at grad school. They did not like each other at grad school, and the entire way through this project, Levi is trying to get Bee off of it, and Bee is like, absolutely not, we're going to make this work. So there's kind of like an academic rivalry there, and at the same time they're kind of getting forced to get to know each other better, which is really funny to watch them sort of unravel that way. I didn't like this as much as I loved The Love Hypothesis, because Bee is absolutely scatterbrained. She doesn't give Levi a chance to speak. That's also one of the things in Spanish Love Deception that annoyed me, is she's like, oh yeah, I know you hate me, and he's like, I don't hate you, and she's like, shh, 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 I'm talking. Like, she talks over him so much, and she's just like, she gets on my nerves, but that's just me. That's just how I prefer my characters. I wish she would actually let him speak for once. He does something nice, and she's like, how is he doing this to be mean? Or like, twist it on me. It's like, no, he's just doing something nice. Like, I get it. But other than that, I love these books. Again, the will they, won't they smut and the side relationship in this is just hilarious. I absolutely love this book. Again, just fantastically written, and just, I need to reread it. Love on the Brain trope wise, you've got again a grumpy sunshine, you've got enemies to lovers, you've got misunderstanding, miscommunication, and some forced proximity. So yeah, if you like those tropes, that's where you go. So the third book that Ali Hazelwood wrote, which is coming out in 2 months, is Love Theoretically. Love Theoretically is about our main character Elsie, who is a theoretical physicist who's in a very low paying job, and she is working with her mentor, who she absolutely loves, and is also working on the side fake dating as like a pretend girlfriend for people who need to show their families that they do actually have a life. So they pay her to be their fake girlfriend. She then wants to start working at MIT, and on the board for hiring at MIT happens to be Jack. Now, Jack is the brother of one of the men that she fake dates, and he is the brother of the only person that she fake dates more than once. So because she fake dates and she doesn't want them to know much about her, she gives them a false story. So Jack sees her at this thing and he's like, you're not who you say you are. You're lying to my brother. And they kind of butt heads. But she is not about to out his brother. Like, she's not about to say, yeah, your brother's trying to hide the fact that he's single to your family and other things around that. But his brother can't be reached because he's away at a retreat. And Jack and Elsie kind of clash heads. He keeps telling her she is not going to get this job, and she is like, watch me. And she has this whole misunderstanding of why he doesn't want her to have this job, or why she thinks he doesn't want her to have this job. Not understanding what's actually going on, because years before, Jack wrote a scathing paper that was published by a journal, or Jack wrote not a scathing paper, he wrote an incorrect paper on purpose, submitted to this journal, who happened to be run by Elsie's mentor, and it made theoretical physics look ridiculous, because afterwards Jack wrote a scathing review of it. And that basically put massive ripples through the world, and theoretical physicists have been getting slammed for it ever since. And Elsie, being a theoretical physicist, thinks that Jack just hates her because she's a theoretical physicist, not knowing that there's actually a story behind it. Of course there is. But these two start to get to know each other and start to obviously fall for each other, and this is my favourite Ali Hazelwood. I love Jack and Elsie. Jack is like the perfect guy. Like, you cannot find a better love interest for me than Jack. He is just top tier. Like, the tattoos for a start. Get out. Just get out. Like, he has nerdy chemistry tattoos and nerdy physics tattoos. And I love it. I am dead for Jack. Like, I love these two together. The fact that Elsie's having to sort of work on a lot of her mental health, and Jack is there to help her. In fact, kind of puts the mirror up to her and says, you need to deal with this. And I love it. I love it so much. This book, when it's released, get it. Just please read it. Please, for me, read it. Loads to Love You is Ali Hazelwood's anthology collection. She wrote these three novellas on Kindle and then released them as this book. You've got Under One Roof, Stuck With You, and Below Zero. These follow three friends, Mara, Sadie and Hannah. and they're love stories. They are steamy rom-com love stories, and I absolutely love it. Basically, in the first one, our main character is stuck. I can't remember which order they go in for character names, but she is stuck in this house. So it's been bequeathed to her by her former mentor. She goes there to discover that her mentor's nephew, who, as far as she understands, is an awful person, is living there, and they have to live together because they've been given half of the house each, and they can't agree on what to do. Now, she is a scientist who is an environmental scientist and is trying to save the world, and he is a lawyer for an oil company, so you can imagine how much they butt heads. But he's not actually all that he seems, and she really needs to take a step back and get to know him, because I love these two together. The second one is this pair, and they get stuck in a lift and sort of forced to deal with their past. So they had something happen in the past, and you find out through the story what actually happened. This one I felt could have gone better. I didn't think this one was the best. This is my least favourite, but you know, it was interesting, it was good. The smut was good again. And then we've got Below Zero, and this is a main character who is wanting to work for a Mars mission, and she meets this character's cousin who works at NASA, and then when she gets a job, she's working with him again, and she's like, oh my god, hi. Oh, awkward, because something happened in the past. And you see them together, and he's so against her being on this thing that's happening, this mission, I suppose, and she doesn't realise why until she's put into a precarious position that could actually cause her to lose her life. These three are great. They're nice, short, snappy novellas. Absolutely fantastic if you just want a good grab of Ali Hazelwood's style. Trope-wise, for a lot of these, you've got a lot of forced proximity. You've got a lot of enemies, rivals to lovers. You've got a lot of misunderstanding and miscommunication. And I just love these stories. I read Below Zero and immediately had to read The Martian because she's a Mars scientist and I loved it. So that is going to be it for this video. I am in fact going to split this in two because I still have at least 15 books to go over and I have almost an hour's worth of footage. So I'm just going to cut this out here, do a second video that you'll see next month, and yeah, let me know if you've read any of these. Let me know if you plan to read any of these. If there's any other genre recommendations you would like to see from me. I would love to know about it down in the comments. So thanks very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!